Hello, I'm Keely Durbin, and I'm here to share with you information on what happens when you're on a cruise ship and you just want to get tested because you aren't quite sure. Now, this is something that I wish I knew before we went. So I'm going to tell you how the cruise ships deal with when you get tested, if it's negative or if it's positive. Now, I do have a larger video that will come out later following our entire 10-day cruise, how the cases of COVID went from 0 to, at the end, probably over 100, the different precautions and what you need to be aware of for yourself. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this short one. So let's start. Okay, you're on the cruise ship, you're having a great time, but something's not right. You want to get tested for COVID. So let me first of all say, before you call them up and request to be tested for COVID, know that they don't want to test you unless you happen to have some symptoms or that you've been in close contact with someone who might have been positive with COVID. And they're going to ask these when you call, so make sure that you're ready for that. Once you are, and they say, okay, we're sending someone up for COVID, they're going to tell you and everyone in your cabin to stay in your cabin. It's immediately isolation. So if your roommate's not there, then you better track them down and tell them to come back to the room. And just keep everyone there until you have the results. Then usually 45 minutes or so within that time, someone will come to your door, they'll knock at your door and they'll wear the complete hazmat suit and the cover and the mouth and everything. They'll come and they will actually take your COVID test, and they're all done through the nose at this point on all cruise ships. They'll take your test right there. They'll take it down. They'll tell you it'll be 45 minutes to a couple hours. They'll bring it down. They'll do the test, and then you guys are just sitting there waiting for the results. So what happens next? Yay, you're negative, you're happy, you're dancing around the room, you don't have COVID, all is good. No, you're on a cruise ship. Yes, you have tested negative, but remember, you didn't take the test unless you had symptoms or you'd been in close contact with someone with COVID. You and your cabin mates are still under quarantine for at least 24 hours. Celebrity has a 24-hour, if you test negative, 24 hours, you're under quarantine in your cabin. After the 24 hours, they'll test you again. If you're still negative, you're allowed back out. Some other cruise lines have different rules. Norwegian, for example, even though you test negative, but if they know you've been in contact with someone positive, they could keep you in quarantine for 3, 5, even the entire cruise. So make sure that you kind of know what you're going in for when you do it, and it's definitely worth taking the test. So at this point, you're negative, you're quarantined 24 hours. Usually they send a special menu, you get a bottle of wine, you get to just enjoy your cabin for the next 24 hours. You're negative. You just tested positive. Now, this starts a whole chain of balls that I really want to go through so that you understand the process so it's not a big surprise to you. You just tested positive for COVID. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to want to test everyone around you. So obviously everyone that's in your same cabin. If you've been on board and you've been dining with regular people or hanging out with certain people, they're going to want to test all of those people as well. And this will happen with basically your phone ringing off the hook for the next 4 or 5 hours. You'll have security that will call you. They'll want to know everything you did for the last 2.5 days, where you sat in the theater, if you sat at the coffee shop, where you sat, who you spoke to, what did you do, what time, and they're going to try to put together a whole timeline. And through the cameras that they have on board the ship, will allow them to kind of see who you've been in contact with. Then they're sending someone up immediately to test everyone who has been in close contact with you, your family members, your cabin mates, and they will be tested usually within the first hour. They will get those results back within a couple hours. Now, before I go on with what happens to you as positive, what happens to your cabin mate if they're negative? So if you're positive and the cabin mate is negative, they do exactly what happens normally if it was negative. They can stay in the cabin 24 hours later, they will be tested for COVID again. You are positive. They will give you a warning. You can pack your bags. They're going to come and collect you with sprayers and blowers and sanitation, and they will come and collect you and bring you down into a quarantine section of the ship. Now, different ships have different areas. On majority of them, from my research, they're usually down on level 2. They have special quarters down there specifically for quarantine. Now, it's not a dungeon. Yes, it's dark. It's not a balcony. It's not, but they do still give you a special menu for getting good food. They give you a bottle of wine a day. They try to make it a fruit basket. They try to make it as okay as it can be. But if it's your second day of the cruise and you're on a 14-day cruise, it's gonna suck big time because you will probably be down there the entire length of the cruise. But it's the best way that they can to keep people safe. If your cabin mate continues to test negative, they will be able to go back and to join the cruise. Now, tested positive, you quarantined, you returned home. What's gonna happen? So they still wanna keep you as separate as possible from everyone. So what's gonna happen is they're gonna let everyone else on the cruise disembark first. Then you're still positive. They aren't just gonna let you walk off into the world of Fort Lauderdale or Miami or wherever it happens to be. You still need to quarantine until you actually get a negative test result. So you're gonna be the last one off. Then they'll bring you out as a family or a group that's positive down in the quarantine. They will use sprayers and they put you in a private car where they'll bring you to a hotel where you could finish off your quarantine if you need to do so. If you're now testing negative, they'll take you to the airport, wherever it happens to be. So let's say last day of the cruise, you tested positive, you had to quarantine overnight, you arrived in Miami, you're still positive, you can't fly anywhere. So they give you a budget. Now again, every single cruise line is different. Celebrity's budget was $150 a night, $100 for food, and they would only pay for up to 5 nights of a quarantine. So you could start to look around and actually see if you get a hotel for $150 a night and what type of hotel you can get, and then make the correct decision for that, for you and your family. So the big conclusion for all of this, if you can, I would wait until Omicron is a little bit more under control. We had 4 of us that went on a cruise boat. We all 4 got COVID. 2 of us ended up in the quarantine down below in deck 2 and in a hotel afterwards for quarantine. And it is now 11 days after the cruise and we are still in Florida because one of us yet has not tested negative enough to be able to fly home. It's a decision you'll have to make for yourself and for your family. I think in a couple months when Omicron spikes have disappeared, I think cruising's a wonderful way to go. There's always a chance that you will get sick, even before COVID existed. But I do think the chances will be different. But the big thing is to go with your eyes wide open. Know that if you decide to cruise now and you test positive, or if you're unlucky enough to be next to someone who tests positive, you could be quarantined the entire cruise. And there is no insurance that will cover you because you did indeed take the trip. You just did it in quarantine. So happy sailings. I hope all is good. I'll come out with a longer video if you want to see what the whole 10 days of the cruise was like during this time. Just stay tuned and subscribe below. Have a great day.